Past 7:30 in the evening across India. I am Tanvi Taneja. Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Global, bringing you the day's big stories from across India and the world. With me today from Washington, D.C. is my colleague Benji Haya. Hello, Benji.
Good morning, Tanvi. It is 10 a.m. here in Washington, D.C., or 9 a.m. I should say, 3 in the afternoon across Central Europe. Coming up in the next 30 minutes, the White House blasts Donald Trump for his comments that the U.S. may not come to the defense of its allies. And the latest in the war in Gaza, Israel pledges total victory amid more civilian casualties. But first, the headlines, and back to you.
India welcomes the release of 8 of its nationals from Qatar. 7 of them returned to New Delhi. Israel says that over 12,000 Hamas terrorists have been killed in their operation so far. 2 Israeli-Argentinian hostages in Rafah freed. Republicans blast former President Trump over threat to abandon NATO allies. EU chief Joseph Borrell says NATO cannot be a la carte military alliance.
Let's be serious. NATO cannot be an alliance a la carte. It exists or it not exist. But I'm not going to spend my time comment any silly idea that comes during this territorial campaign in the US.
And Russia imposes sanctions on 18 British nationals, including academicians, historians, for what Moscow claims is an attempt to demonize Russia. So the government of India today welcomed the release of 8 Indian nationals in Qatar. 7 out of the 8 have returned to India. A report.
In a major diplomatic victory, India secured the release of 8 Indian nationals who were sentenced to death in Qatar. 7 of the 8 nationals released by Doha reached New Delhi on Monday morning.
We deeply appreciate the decision of the Qataris government and the Amir to release them. We are happy to have 7 of those Indian nationals back. 8th Indian national has also been released, and we continue to work with the Qatar government to see how quickly his return to India.
Setting their foot back on the home soil on return, after several agonizing months of captivity, the 7 Indian nationals who were sentenced to death heaved a sigh of relief. They praised Prime Minister Narendra Modi, saying that their freedom could come only because of the intervention of PM Modi. They said they could breathe free due to the sustained diplomatic efforts at the behest of the Prime Minister of India to secure their release.
Without the intervention of Prime Minister Modi, it wouldn't have been.
We have waited almost 18 months to be back in India. We're extremely grateful to the Honorable Prime Minister, Sri Narendra Modi ji. It certainly wouldn't have been possible without his personal intervention and that equation with the Emir of Qatar. I think we are grateful to the Government of India, from the bottom of our heart, for every effort that has been made, and this day wouldn't have been possible.
The Indian government expressed appreciation for the release of the Indian nationals, saying the government of India welcomes the release of 8 Indian nationals working for the Dehra Global Company who were detained in Qatar. 7 out of the 8 have returned to India. We appreciate the decision by the Amir of the State of Qatar to enable the release and homecoming of these nationals. Minister of State for External Affairs Meenakshi Lekhi echoed the sentiments, thanking the Qatar government for the cooperation in facilitating the release of the Indian nationals.
मैं प्रधानमंत्री जी का धन्यवाद और आभार प्रकट करना चाहती हूँ और साथ में कतर के अमीर का प्रधानमंत्री जी की इंटरवेंशन का लाभ जो है वो हम सबको मिला और अमीर ऑफ कतर जिन्होंने ये सज़ा को वापस लिया उनका भी आभार कि भारतीय वापस आए हैं। उनके परिवारजन लगातार बने हुए थे, हमारे से संपर्क में थे, तो परिवारजन भी और साथ में संपूर्ण भारतवासियों को इसकी हार्दिक बधाई।
This marks a significant diplomatic victory for India due to the complete turnaround in the situation when just 2 months back the Indian nationals were facing death penalty. As India celebrates their safe return, the episode stands as a testament to the power of diplomatic resolve and international cooperation in safeguarding the rights and freedom of Indian citizens.
Now, DD India's Amritpal Singh joins us live from New Delhi. Amritpal, indeed, it's a big diplomatic win for India. Have details surrounding these 8 Indians' arrest, sentencing and commuting of death sentence out in the public now?
They were arrested in 2022 on the 30th of August in 2022. That's last year, and then it took a while for them to start the trial. There were mercy petitions filed by the family members on the behalf of those arrested, these Indian nationals and former Navy personnel. They were rejected in March of 2023. That's when the trial started. On the 26th of October last year, they were sentenced, given a death sentence after diplomatic intervention and legal assistance by India, and also a political intervention at the highest political level. The Court of First Instance, the Court of Appeals actually reduced the sentence to commuted the sentence to long-term imprisonment or life imprisonment. And then we know the news came in last night, late last night, that they were released, and 7 of the 8 have returned to India. One remains in Doha. There are some technical issues with his travel documents, and he shall be returning to India in a couple of days. So that's what the details are.
Okay. And what inferences can be drawn from this entire episode?
Could you explain me that question? I don't understand that question.
I mean, since there was a lot of diplomatic intervention, Amritpal, when we look back at this entire case, what inferences can we draw from it? Well,
the case went to court. India, assisted them. They fought the case on multiple fronts, legally, diplomatically. Diplomatic intervention was required. Then there was political intervention as well, as I said, at the highest order. That's why you hear them thank the Prime Minister for speaking to the Amir of Qatar. In a graduated manner, this was taken up at various levels, and then you see the results that you see. It speaks of India's growing diplomatic heft with other countries, and also a deep friendly relationship between India and Qatar that exists. And that is why the Amir of Qatar was gracious enough to grant pardon. It is one of the rare cases. He does grant pardon on Eid and in Ramzan, but this was a case. These were charges of espionage, and that too of charges of these former Navy personnel leaking secrets to Israel. Given the sensitivities in the Arab world about Israel, it must have been a really difficult decision for the Amir to take, but clearly diplomacy prevailed here, and also the political intervention prevailed here, and they applied the Amir would have put his calculations, taken into account the friendly ties between India and Qatar, and his personal relationship with Prime Minister Modi, and all those factors would have led to the release of these 8 Indian nationals.
Okay. Thank you very much, Amrit, for those updates. Now, staying in the region, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will pay an official visit to the UAE from 13th to 14th of February. This will be Prime Minister Narendra Modi's 7th visit to the UAE. He will be addressing an Indian diaspora in an event in Abu Dhabi, as well as inaugurate the BAPS Hindu temple there. He will also participate in the World Government Summit in Dubai as a guest of honor and deliver a special keynote address. DD India's Meghna Dev spoke to Indian ambassador to the UAE, Sanjay Sudhir, for more.
What's the importance of the World Government Summit? You know, because every year by year we see that a number of leaderships from different countries are invited. And what's the importance of Prime Minister going there and delivering his address for the second time, as you said?
World Government Summit is some kind of a confluence of global leaders. I would say, in general, thought leaders. Okay. Whether it is political thought leaders or intellectual thought leaders, technical thought leaders, they all assemble here. And it's sometimes called the Davos of this part of the world. Oh, okay. I mean, this time I'm told that more than 20 heads of state and government will be participating.
We have also seen MOUs signed during the Vibrant Gujarat Global Summit. We saw that after the bilateral meeting, there were MOUs signed in terms of industrial parks, food processing, and much more. So what do you have to say in terms of the economic cooperation?
So when I say that in the last 9-10 years, this relationship has got transformed, it includes transformation on the economic side as well. So 2 years back, in February 2022, we signed the CEPA, which was UAE's first CEPA ever, and our first CEPA with any country of the Middle East. And within 2 years of that, we will be signing the bilateral investment treaty, which has already been approved by our cabinet, and it was there in media. I think that will make the UAE the only country with which India has both a CEPA and a bilateral investment treaty. Okay. Our trade has shot up to $85 billion already. Investments are also doing very well. In financial year 2022-23, UAE was the 4th largest source of FDI.
With camera person Pramod Negi and my colleague Ashwini Mishra, this is Meghna Dev for DD India from Abu Dhabi.
So after concluding his 2-day visit to the UAE, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be travelling to Doha, Qatar on February 14th. Moving on now to Israel-Hamas conflict. The Israeli army released a video on Monday showing explosions it said were strikes on Hezbollah targets in southern Lebanon. The IDF said its fighter jets struck a vehicle in which Hezbollah terrorists were driving. The jets also struck a military site in the area of Tayar Harfa and military structures in the area of Marau El Ras, Al-Adisa and Jibain were destroyed. Earlier today, Israel freed 2 Israeli-Argentinian hostages in Rafah under the cover of airstrikes. Also, Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Jerusalem today. My colleague Benji Haya is in Washington, D.C. He gives us more on all this and other stories making headlines around the world. Benji, Netanyahu pressing on with his offensive in Gaza.
Yes, hi again, Tanvi. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu on Monday saying his country will not pass any opportunity to free more captives from Gaza, describing sustained military pressure until, quote, total victory over Hamas as essential for Israeli security. The statement came after Israel launched a special forces operation that, as you say, freed 2 Israeli hostages in Rafah, where Israeli strikes have also killed dozens of people. Israel says that more than 12,000 Hamas terrorists have been killed so far in this conflict.
We brought Luis and Fernando back home. In a joint rescue operation of the IDF, Israel Security Force, the Shin Bet, and the police SWAT team, we rescued Luis Harry and Fernando Merman, who were kidnapped from Nir Yelzak by Hamas on October 7. This was a complex rescue operation under heavy firing in the heart of Rafah, based on sensitive and very high-quality intelligence garnered by the military intelligence branch and the Shin Bet.
As we were hearing, the Netherlands Prime Minister Mark Rutte met Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Jerusalem on Monday. That meeting following a Dutch appeal court order on the government there, blocking all exports of the F-35 fighter jet parts to Israel. That order was given over concerns that those parts were being used in violations of international law amid Israel's Gaza offensive. The Dutch government has to comply with that order within the next week. Well, ahead of the informal meeting in Brussels in the next period of time, European Union ministers, I should say that the UN Agency for Palestinians, the UNRWA, needs to address allegations that some of its 13,000 staff in Gaza were involved in the October 7th Israel-Hamas conflict. Its chief, Philip Lazzarini, will also attend this meeting. Praising the agency, the EU's top diplomat, Josep Borrell, says that it is doing what others can't do on the ground there and that those allegations need to be verified. State Secretary, Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development of Germany, Joachim Flasbach, also said that UNRWA is essential. The White House has blasted Donald Trump for his comments about NATO, calling them appalling and unhinged. The former US president said that his country might not protect fellow NATO allies that are not spending enough of their defense budget and not defend them from a Russian attack. NATO's chief, Jens Stoltenberg, insists that any attack on NATO countries will be met with a unified and forceful response. And Estonia's Prime Minister added that Trump's comments on NATO should be a wake-up call for allies to invest in defence. The Kremlin's declined to comment on those remarks made by Donald Trump in a South Carolina rally over the weekend. Staying with the story, the European Union's foreign policy chief, Josep Borrell, says that NATO cannot be a, quote, a la carte military alliance dependent on the whims of the US president. Take a listen.
NATO cannot be a la carte military alliance. Cannot be a military alliance that works depending on the humor of the president of the US on those days. It's not yes, now yes, tomorrow no, it depends, who are you? Now, come on, let's be serious. Let's be serious. NATO cannot be an alliance a la carte.
Ukraine, and a country that is feeling the wrath of Russia recently, has announced that it will produce thousands of long-range drones capable of deep strikes and already has up to 10 companies manufacturing those drones. The recent series of strikes on oil facilities reflected the government's progress in rapidly deregulating the drone market and increasing funding for it. More than $2.5 million American dollars in grants were allocated to military tech startups via what's known as the Brave One initiative set up by the government last year, an amount set to be increased roughly tenfold by 2024. Ukraine's production levels and deliveries increased more than 120 times in 2023 as part of course, that wartime push. Stateside, the US Senate will on Monday attempt to pass a nearly $96 billion aid package for Ukraine, Israel and Taiwan, a portion of a wider package that the administration wanted to see pass, which included border security. This, though, is just regarding foreign aid. The Senate is expected to cast a procedural vote today. The bill did get a boost when the Congress's upper chamber voted 67 to 27 to move it past an important procedural hurdle on Sunday. Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has set a course for its passage by Wednesday of this week. Russia's imposed sanctions on 18 British citizens, including officials and academics. On Monday, Moscow said the sanctions were imposed on British nationals for, quote, demonising Russia and escalating the conflict in Ukraine. Those retaliatory sanctions were imposed against UK Deputy Defence Minister James Cartledge, a number of other officials and academics too, including historians Orlando Feigs and Norman Davies and Russian specialist James Scher. Also in the US, President Joe Biden's joined TikTok on Sunday, part of his re-election campaign to try and engage younger voters especially. He made his debut with a short video using the NFL's Super Bowl to reach younger voters ahead of those presidential elections in November of this year. The NFL, the National Football League, is a professional American football league. The Super Bowl is the annual league championship game played last night in Las Vegas. The video showed Biden answering rapid-fire questions on topics ranging from politics to the NFL championship game, the Super Bowl, which was won by the Kansas Chiefs. And we'll have much more on the US news in the coming days as Donald Trump faces more trials. But for now, let's return to you in New Delhi.
Thank you very much, Benji. Benji Hire joining us all from Washington, D.C. You're watching DD India Global, still to come on the show. Negotiations for a coalition government continue in Pakistan between former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif's PMLN party and Bilawal Bhutto Zardari's PPP. Sri Lanka and Mauritius launch India's instant mobile payment system, the UPI. Mauritius also introduces India's RuPay debit and credit cards.
Voice of a rising aspirational world. Stories of challenges, struggles and accomplishment. A world battling conflict, hunger and poverty. Embracing growth, development, science and technology. A voice of progress, a voice of unity. Watch Voice of the Global South with me, Akshay Dongre, only on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Global. I am Tanvi Taneja. On to Pakistan now. Three main political parties of the country intensified their efforts to form a coalition government after the February 8th polls threw up a hung parliament amid allegations of rigging. Pakistan's People's Party chairperson Bilawal Bhutto Zardari and its president Asif Ali Zardari held a meeting on Sunday with Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz president Shehbaz Sharif. The overall situation in the country and future cooperation were discussed, with the leaders agreeing to join hands for political stability in the country. India's instant mobile payment system called the Unified Payments Interface UPI has been launched in Mauritius and Sri Lanka. Mauritius has also launched India's RuPay debit and credit cards. The Prime Ministers of India and Mauritius and President of Sri Lanka jointly launched the services via video conferencing on Monday. Extension of the RuPay card services in Mauritius will enable Mauritian banks to issue the cards based on RuPay mechanism in Mauritius and permit settlements in India and Mauritius. The Secretary-General of Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, Kau Kim Horn, is on an official 5-day visit to India. On Monday, Kim Horn met India's External Affairs Minister Subramaniam Jaishankar in New Delhi. Their discussions focused on taking forward the comprehensive strategic partnership connectivity, food security and trade. India supports the priorities set by Lao PDR as ASEAN Chair for 2024 under the theme ASEAN, Enhancing Connectivity and Resilience.
I think there are different levels of synergies that we can work with. And I think with Quad, this is something that we don't deal directly between ASEAN and Quad per se, but we work with each individual members of Quad.
Next Tracker, a leading global provider of intelligent solar tracker and software solutions, today announced it has been selected for repeat order by Sterling and Wilson Renewable Energy Limited. Next Tracker was selected by SWRE to supply its flagship solar trackers for the second and third phase of solar projects at the NTPC Renewable Energy Limited Solar Park in Gujarat's Run of Kutch. Sterling and Wilson Renewable Energy and Next Tracker have surpassed over 5 gigawatts of collaborative solar power generation projects globally.
Next Tracker's delivered over 5 gigawatts of high-performing systems here in India, and that's part of 10 gigawatts in the region. That's a lot of power. And this power is not only environmentally preferred, it's also economically preferred because we're lowering costs for customers as they use the energy while advancing national energy security, creating jobs, both manufacturing systems to be used here in India and for export. And now we take a look at other stories making news around the world.
Poland's Prime Minister Donald Tusk arrived in Paris on Monday, seeking closer ties with France. As the war in Ukraine enters its third year and Europe's capitals eye the possibility of Donald Trump returning to the White House. Tusk said that France and Poland are on the same page with regards to the geopolitical situation and support for Ukraine. 3 people, including the head of the Greek shipping company European Navigation, were shot dead by a former employee at the firm's office in Athens on Monday. The former employee later killed himself. The police are investigating the incident. A powerful fire broke out at an amusement park in the western Swedish city of Gothenburg on Monday. The fire engulfed outdoor water slides and related facilities that were under construction. No injuries have been reported. The death toll from a landslide that struck southern Philippines on the 6th of February has risen to 68. A total of 32 people have been injured, and provincial authorities are consolidating efforts to provide aid for those who have been displaced by the disaster. Now, in a practice unique to Siberia, workers at the Yakutsk shipyard on the banks of the Lena River toil in sub-zero temperatures as low as -50 degrees Celsius. The process, called Vymorozka, which roughly translates as freezing out, is carried out over weeks during bitter Siberian winter to maintain the hulking vessels ahead of the new navigation season. Tough tasks indeed. That's all in this edition of DD India Global. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. Connect with us on Facebook, X and Instagram. You can also connect with us online at ddindia.co.in. We will be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I am Tanvi Taneja from my entire team in New Delhi. Thank you for watching. Namaskar.